Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And this week, we're breaking down the pay-per-view that is UFC 316, Merab Dvalishvili taking on Sugar Sean O'Malley 2. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And we're going to dive right into the early prelims here at UFC 316 as we talk about Andreas Gustafsson taking on Khaos Williams. And Carlos, I'm going to pass this one to you. Who do you have in this opening fight?
I actually went with Khaos Williams. This one, not confident, because if Khaos doesn't catch him coming in, which, Gustafsson has no head movement. He doesn't even move his feet. Doesn't slip anything on the way. And he just usually bulls his way forward, which is good against people that can't hit. But against Khaos, especially his straight punches, those become very dangerous as you just walk in like a zombie. And Gustafsson, he just can't walk inside. He's got to try to do something, like at least reach out, wrist control, parry the punches. But if he's going to come in like that, just straightforward, somebody like Khaos is going to catch him pretty good coming in. The thing is if Khaos doesn't catch him, I feel like Gustafsson can kind of rough him up against the cage and, start to do some of his dirty work where he's like throwing elbows in the clinch, pushing you up against the cage, ripping punches, so that, and just wearing on him just his weight. So there's a lot to think about in this one that we haven't seen from Gustafsson, because this is his debut. But based on experience, I'm taking Khaos Williams. I think he could probably catch him on the way in, or at least make him second guess, just walking straight into the fire.
Yeah, 2 for Williams here for me as well. It's tough to really know what you're going to get from Gustafsson other than just an absolute brawl and a melee. And I agree with Carlos here. I do think that Williams can definitely catch him on the way in. One thing I will say about Williams, though, is that when you watch tape on him, I wish that he stayed a little bit more technical at times. He does throw to the body. He does try to stay composed. But in certain moments, I think he does get kind of suckered into a brawl and kind of doesn't necessarily stay patient. We've seen at times that he'll lunge in with a big right hand, and I think that might get him taken down here, or at least backed up against the fence. And we know with Gustafsson as well that Greco-Roman wrestling that he does have in his back pocket, he can always exploit at any moment. He talks about he just likes to get into a firefight. He talks about getting into a brawl. We saw with Williams in his last fight when he fought against Bonfim, he was taken down early in round 2 and got submitted. First time Williams has ever been finished, so I'm sure he'll want to get back in the win column here. And I think if he stays off the fence and keep this fight sort of, at range, in the middle of the octagon, it's going to be able to give him the advantage, especially in the striking. As Carlos mentioned, Gustafsson is very, very open on the feet and, very, very hittable. I think this really just comes down to, can Gustafsson get Williams up against the fence where he does most of his best work, or can Khaos keep this in the middle of the octagon? And I think if Khaos throws straight shots, I definitely think that he can find the chin here. So give me Williams as well. I think Khaos gets it done here. I don't necessarily know if he puts him out, because Gustafsson is pretty tough, but I think he'll land the better shots. And next up, we have Marquel Mederos taking on Mark Kuchowski. I'm not sure how that one's pronounced, but Carlos, let me know who you got in this fight.
I went safe bet on this one. I took Mederos. Only reason is we've seen him fight. We've watched him get taken down, get back up, able to wrestle enough to get back to his feet. One thing I don't know about Choinski, however you say his name, it is his debut. So from what I've seen on the regional scene, he's been able to keep guys at bay with his wrestling. A lot of them hesitate to come forward because they don't want to strike. They don't want to leave themselves open for a takedown. So he ends up exploiting that by beating them up on the feet. One of the things that I feel is this will be the first time where he's going to go against a guy, because at this level, they've all fought wrestlers. I don't know how high level his wrestling is, but he's going to go up against a guy who's seen it, might be able to get back up, might be able to beat him up on the feet, because I believe Mederos is just a little sharper on the feet. We'll find out.
Yeah, 2 for Mederos here, but I got to admit, I'm not very confident in this one at all. I think Mederos, we've said this before in the past, Carlos and I, that he tends to fight to the level of his competition. And so if Mark isn't necessarily the best fighter coming in here, that he might fight to the level of Mark. And Mark hasn't necessarily even fought the high level competition either. And he's coming in obviously on his UFC debut here, so a big step up in competition. Mark as well, when you look through his camp and who he fights with and who he trains with on a regular basis, he trains with the Pettis brothers, guys like Rafael Stoltz. He used to train with Ben Askren when Ben Askren was fighting. Jordan Newman, who's a Bellator wrestler who's fairly well known over there in Bellator. So I don't doubt that his wrestling is a respectable standard. It just depends on him coming in here, what his gas tank looks like here. And we saw against Mederos that he can be taken down against, guys like Austin Hubbard were able to take him down and control him in round 2. So I do think there's a path to victory here for Mark, which is why I'm not super confident. Mederos' counter-striking style, Factory X product, he obviously should be prepared for that with a higher level camp. We know that he can fight 3 rounds. We know that he's probably the more dangerous striker. Mark does like to pressure on the feet, so I do think he'll get in his face, but give me Mederos here. I think his striking is going to be a little bit too much, and it's hard to really get a gauge, especially on tape, how good Mark actually is, because the level of competition he's fighting up until this point has been lackluster, to say the least. So give me the 2-0 UFC product here in Mederos to get it done. And next up, we have Yanal Ashmouz taking on Quillan Salkilld. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this fight?
I'm going to have to go with Salkilld. And, he has the obvious height and reach advantages in this. I feel like he's more technical, especially in the stand-up. But ground-wise, I haven't really seen a lot of it from him in his videos. He's able to get back to his feet, and he's able to stuff some takedowns. The level of competition, don't know how good they are, but he's good enough to keep the fight where he wants it in his previous fights. Looks for openings and has more well-rounded skills, I believe. I think he's got a little bit slicker strike and a little bit better movement on the feet. When it comes to Ashmouz, I think his wrestling is what's going to have to get it done. He's going to have to try to get him to the ground. He has very good ground and pound. He has actually very decent wrestling as well, like maybe a little bit more than decent. He has good inside trips, good body lock twists, takedowns. And, I think that I just think that the level that Salkilld is going to bring to him, only thing Ashmouz can do is actually push the pace on the feet, because he's not the most technical, but push the pace on the feet, get him up against the cage, get those takedowns, and just stay pressure right in his face. That's his only key to victory. But right now, I think Salkild's got it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Salkilld as well. I think that the technical kickboxing here of Salkilld is going to be enough. And as Carlos mentioned, the height, the reach advantage is definitely going to play a big factor here. Ashmouz, we saw in his fight against Trevor Peek that he was able to implement the wrestling that Carlos talked about, and he was able to get a unanimous decision there. But Trevor Peek isn't necessarily skilled or the size of Salkilld here. So I think that isn't going to play a factor for Salkilld. He likes to mix in his own takedowns. He's got good takedown defense himself, great in scrambles. He's been able to go to the judges' scorecards. He's got finishes on the ground and on the feet. The knockout of Jubilee in his UFC debut is very impressive. That straight right hand. Obviously, the level of competition there, not necessarily very good, but he's shown an ability to put people out on the feet with straight shots. And to me, the one factor I think in this fight for Ashmouz is he just seems to struggle to be able to set up his striking. When you look at his striking as a whole, if the wrestling isn't going his way, he kind of just lunges in with right hands. He throws one shot at a time. If he lunges in here throwing big overhands against Salkilld, I think he's going to get absolutely sniped. Salkilld likes to rip to the body with the left hand. He throws in nice combinations, and usually it's the second or third shot that catches you. He rips to the leg as well. I think all of the factors here play in Salkild's favor. I think he gets it done here, goes 2-0 inside the UFC. I'm going to say that he maybe gets a finish here as well with another straight right hand or maybe even a head kick. And next up, we have Brendson Ribeiro taking the place of Johnny Walker on short notice here against Azamat Murzakanov. I'm going to kick this one off here, and I feel very, very confident here in Azamat Murzakanov. I think it's kind of funny here that Azamat's getting a replacement of a chinny Brazilian. The UFC said, okay, who are we going to give him? Another chinny Brazilian. So Brendson Ribeiro was able to get a Kimura victory in his last fight against a UFC debutant here in the Apex. But to me, Ribeiro just isn't, again, UFC level. I think 205 and heavyweight are not necessarily the most skilled divisions. He has an 81-inch reach here, so almost a 10-inch reach advantage, but Azamat's very, very good at getting on the inside. He does have a little bit of Dagestani wrestling to fall back on. He trains over in Dagestan, working on his wrestling. But the thing that's really, really stood out so far in his UFC fights has been his boxing, his striking. He's got very, very fast hands, very explosive for a guy that you wouldn't look at and think that he's very explosive. And the range and the reach has never been a factor here for him at 205. He does a fantastic job of being able to get inside the pocket. He has a fantastic step-in knee that he really likes. You saw that against Alonzo Menafield. And also he has a really nice uppercut when guys sort of dip their head. He's able to land. The hand speed on this guy is fantastic. I'm very, very impressed with this guy. I think this guy's going to be a real contender at 205. We haven't seen him in a while. I'm not sure exactly why. I wasn't able to find any injuries or any layoff reasons, but I think he comes in here. I think he destroys Ribeiro. I think he gets the finish in either rounds 1 or 2 here. So give me Azamat to get it done on the feet. And if things go south, you know that he can fall back on that wrestling, and I don't think the reach advantage is going to be an issue. So I like Azamat in this one. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Well, I ended up going with Azamat as well. Ribeiro, I wouldn't say that he's not UFC level. He's got all the tools to be there. I just don't know why he can't put it together consistently. I mean, he's got a 2-0 in his last 2, so he's won his last 2, which is great for him. I'm sure he feels great about it, but it's not against the best opponents as well. I think that he's got dangerous striking. I think that he could be powerful. They're a little loopy, and he's very quick, but that does nothing if you don't know how to use it, if you can land it. And Azamat here, he's what I love is when the big guys get on their toes and they start moving around and get light on his feet, and that's what is going to make him dangerous. Although Ribeiro, I think, is the better athlete, I do think that Azamat is he's the better mover. He's going to be lighter. He's going to get out of the way quicker, and he's going to counter a lot faster. And I think that's going to be the difference. Ribeiro's a little chinny. Yeah, he's a tad bit chinny. I think that's going to I think he'll probably end up putting him out in the second round at least. I think Ribeiro overextends on a lot of his strikes, and I think that's where he catches him.
Absolutely, 2 fairly confident picks here for Azamat. Whenever I hear the name Azamat, it always reminds me of Borat when he's talking about his friend, like, me and my homie Azamat. But it always just makes me laugh whenever I hear that name. But 2 confident picks here for Azamat to get it done and go 15-0. And next up, we have Joe Sang-Yo taking on Jeka Saragih. And I got to say, man, I don't know how Carlos feels about Sang-Yo. We'll find out in a minute. But I was impressed with Sang-Yo. I was kind of surprised what I saw from him. He fights over in Brave and on the Korean Zombies promotion over there in South Korea. A flashy striker. He does that like no-look step-back right hand that Sean O'Malley likes to do. He doesn't play basketball in there after he knocks guys out, but he may as well because he does have that kind of striking. And I saw him mix in a little bit of the wrestling as well, which I really liked. His level of competition is obviously questionable coming in, making his UFC debut. So it is obviously something that we need to see in this fight. But I just believe here that Jeka is just out of his depth. All 4 of his losses, he's been finished. 3 by submission, 1 by knockout. And to me, Jeka is not UFC level. He's got ground and pound finishes against, or he got finished, by Jubilee, who isn't UFC level in my opinion. He got finished in his last fight by submission against Wilson, who's a karate style fighter that he was able to find the submission against him. And to me, I just think that Sang-Yo is just an impressive striker. I think if this goes south, he can get takedowns. I think on the feet, he has that nice right hand, spinning back kick to the body. He has nice high kicks, very snappy. And I think that he's going to put Jeka out here. And to me as well, the one thing I did notice that I think could play a factor in this fight, but I'm not going to pick it to happen, is when Sang-Yo leaves the pocket, he does tend to fight, generally speaking, with his hands down. He is good at, kind of managing range, but he does kind of leave his chin up in the air when he kind of exits the pocket. He does leave his hands down. So obviously Jeka could definitely capitalize on that, but he's more of a kill or be killed fighter, Jeka. He's definitely a brawler. He's definitely somebody who I don't trust his chin and his skill set here to take advantage of those low hands. I think, honestly, Sang-Yo comes in here and gets the finish here. Fairly confident in him this week to make his UFC debut in Flashing Lights. Carlos, who you got in this
one? I did take Sang-Yo. I thought he was everything that you already stated. I thought he had very good movement. I think he looks pretty good on the feet. He's got long strikes. That right hand is nice long. It's hard. He's dropped some guys in the video that I've seen. Um, on the ground as well is he's got good top control. Once he's able to get someone down off the cage, he's able to keep them down, and they struggle to get back up. But I think most of the time he lets them back up, and then he starts going to work on the feet as well. I think that's what he likes to do. Light on the feet, good movement, good in and out, kind of stalking as well. Saragih, I mean, I've seen him throw some shots. He's got some finishes. They look impressive, but maybe it was just the guy was coming forward and he caught him and he doubled the power coming forward. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't look like super impressive. He's kind of wild, very looping. But the other thing too is that doesn't have a reach advantage here, but Sang Yu looks like he's got a reach advantage. Looks like he's long, got some pretty long legs, long arms. And I think it's going to be a problem for Saragih to actually come in and get an easy takedown or get an easy shot on him. But either way, like I see it, whether it goes to the ground or on the feet, I think Sang Yu's got it.
Yeah, for sure. I will say one thing about Jeka as well, that when I watched that last fight with Wilson, he just looked like the second that the fight hit the floor, he looked like he was completely out of his depth. Like he'd never trained it, instantly got, I think it was arm triangled or arm barred. I forget the exact submission, but he looked completely out of his depth, which I just think is recipe for disaster here. If he had a big ground advantage, I definitely think that he would be wise to take it to the ground. But like Carlos said, I think wherever this goes, I think that Sang Yu is definitely live here for a finish. And one thing I will say is I've definitely been pronouncing Sang Yu incorrectly. I've been saying Sang Yo, but I wish his name was Sang Yo. That'd be pretty cool if he... Yo. And next up, we have Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Serghei Spivac. And I know Carlos and I have flip-flopped a little bit on this one, so I'm going to let Carlos go first. Who you got in this one, my friend?
All right. I ended up going with Spivac. I like Salsa Boy. I think he can. I think he's got some good boxing. He throws a kick here or there. It doesn't really do too much. Do too much else than boxing. Takedown defense, pretty decent. He got some strong hips, but once he's down, he's kind of, helpless. You know what I mean? And hopefully he's been working on that. Spivac, not really impressive. I thought he's come a lot better as of recent. I think he's around the 240 instead of the 260 mark, a little bit more now. Took a lot of unnecessary weight, so his movement's a little bit lighter on his feet in that midsection of his. And the one thing that I don't believe that Acosta's got that one-shot power where if Spivac's coming in, he dips his head to one side. I really don't think he could just hit him and put him out. I mean, yeah, you can catch him, wobble him, and then you finish him there, but I really don't see that happening. Spivac does loop punches as he's coming in once he dips his head, and that's all he needs to do to get in and get close to get a clinch and then get a takedown. Still not confident. I still feel that whether it goes to late second round, third round, Waldo could catch him with something as he's coming in and he's a little tired. But I feel that once he gets Waldo down, he's going to control him, at least be able to win 2 rounds that way. And if it goes to a decision, get that. And that's what I'm thinking. So Spivac is who I got.
Yeah, I struggled with this one because the same reason that you said about Spivac in his last 2 fights, he's come in and he's looked, lean and mean. He's definitely looked in some of the best shape we've seen him in. That combat sambo style, the polar bear is his nickname. He comes in, tries to get you against the fence, get you into clinch, trip takedowns, and it doesn't require a lot of effort, and he's very dangerous on top. And even his last fight against Almeida, he was able to get Almeida down early in the clinch, trip, get on top, do damage. And one of the things that I do like about Spivac is that once he gets you down, he isn't necessarily looking straight away for the submission. He'll try and soften you up with ground and pound. Rafael Fialho should probably take a page out of Spivac's book, but that's neither here nor there. But I think with Waldo Cortes-Acosta that he's obviously going to be the better striker here, fights behind the jab. And I agree with Carlos. I kind of question whether he's actually got a whole lot of power. They talk a lot about his baseball background and his right hand and all this stuff. We haven't necessarily seen too much out of the finishing capabilities of Cortes-Acosta. He did get a finish against Ryan Spann in his last fight, but Ryan Spann also looked like an absolute Wish Poundland version of himself. He just didn't necessarily look that great, so it's hard to really take stock from that for Costa's finishing ability. But I am going to go with Cortes-Acosta here. I think that he can keep it standing. I think if he stays out of the clinch and kind of just uses his boxing, I think that he's going to have success here. I think if Spivac comes in and he's able to get this fight to the ground, I agree with Carlos. I think that he could definitely have success, but a little bit of dissension never hurt anybody. I'm going to go with Waldo Cortes-Acosta to keep this one standing. Jab the face off of Spivac here, use his striking, use his boxing, use his footwork. And I think the longer that this fight goes, the more to me that it's going to favor Acosta. And one thing I will say about Spivac too is in 4 of his losses, he has been finished in chin. So coming off that knockout loss, I do question where his chin's at. Maybe we'll see if Salsa Boy can get it done on the feet. But I will say if this goes to the ground, I am going to be worried. And next up, we have Wang Cong, the Joker, taking on Ariane Lipski. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this female fight?
This is a tough one because Lipski sometimes she'll get a submission randomly on someone. Casey O'Neill's got a pretty decent ground game, and she's got an armbar submission, I think, on her. What's weird is that if she stands to fight with Cong, that's her bread and butter is her stand-up. But I feel Kong's going to have the advantage there. I also think that if she tries to take her down, she doesn't have the best takedowns, when it comes to grappling, like with wrestling. She doesn't really have high wrestling. So she's going to struggle to get her down as well. So once she gets a foot sweep or a trip or something, she's going to be able to do some work. But until then, what exactly can she do to get Wang to the ground? And I don't really know what she can do. And on the feet, Wang is very confident. She's a little showboaty, and sometimes you pay the price for that, like she did in her last outing. But I think against Lipski, she doesn't have the zing and the sting to actually hurt Cong on the feet. So I'm going to give it to Cong. I think that I did see the odds on this because I remember her last fight. And the odds are a little crazy as well on this one because if this ever hits the mat, Lipski could probably finish this right away. But I'm going to go with Cong.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cong. I will say I'm probably a little bit more confident than you are, but I do think throughout Kong's UFC run here so far, the odds have been absolutely ridiculous. I do think that Ariane Lipski is very live if this fight hits the ground. I just don't think that Ariane Lipski is going to be able to get this one to the ground. We've seen in the past as well that Ariane Lipski's struggled with people taking her down and kind of dominating her on the ground, which isn't going to be a path to victory here for Cong. I think she'd be stupid if she decides to go down that road and try and prove that she's been working on her grappling. But I think when it comes to the stand-up, obviously Cong is levels above. Former, Muay Thai world champion. She's obviously been able to, go blow for blow with Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously a very credentialed striker, but Carlos is right. Sometimes she does kind of drink her own Kool-Aid a little bit, and she just kind of feel herself in there. And she's been caught, I think it was 2 fights ago, where she got caught, mopped, and dropped, even though she was having success early. And I think if she comes in here and she kind of just, stays a little bit more measured on the feet, she could definitely get her Lipski out of here. But I think that the odds on this one, again, are crazy, like we've discussed many times in the Wang Cong fights. I think she comes in here. I think she's able to pressure on the feet, kind of build into this fight a little bit and kind of have success, especially kicking the low calf. I think Lipski will implement the grappling. I think she'll stuff the takedowns here, and I think Cong ultimately gets a finish late in this one, or maybe rides out for a confident decision. But give me Wang Cong here. I think she gets it done. And next up, we have Bruno Silva taking on Joshua Van, and I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
Oh boy! All right, so I'm just gonna say I took Joshua Van. He's slick. His boxing looks sharp. I wish he would throw a little bit more with the kicks. Somebody like Silva, especially, who's so fast. So him and Manel Kopp had their fight, and when you watch it, it actually looks at some point like somebody hit the fast forward button during the matchup because they were pretty much like in the Matrix, the speed level. And Manel Kopp actually bested him at that speed. I just don't know if Van can keep up with that speed, but Van has very good timing. And I feel that the timing of Van when it comes down to it with Bruno Silva, I feel that he's going to get the better of him. The problem is if Bruno starts pushing the pace, gets him up against the cage, starts trying to take him down, adding the strides, just mixing everything up, I think that the speed of that and the pace of that could actually confuse Van a little bit, and he may fight from behind for the rest of the fight. But I feel that Van's got pretty good takedown defense. I feel that when he lands, he's going to be a lot more effective power-wise on Silva. And I think that maybe I have a bias because I like this kid, Joshua Van. I think he's got good skill, good technique. I think he's got a good mindset for fighting. And I think he can get it done.
Yeah, Joshua Van's actually surprised me in the UFC. 23 years old, still very young, still improving, but he's looked fantastic. Outside of that one knockout loss he had against Charles Johnson, he's looked very, very good, honestly. And I struggle to get to the Bruno Silva side here because, as Carlos mentioned, he was absolutely outclassed on the feet by Manel Kape. The speed of Kape and the hand speed and the striking just really kind of left Silva kind of puzzled of what to do, really. And even though Joshua Van isn't necessarily as quick as Kape, I think that he throws in better combinations. He's a little bit more technical when it comes to when I say he's technical, I don't necessarily mean that Kape isn't technical, but what I mean is that Van tends to throw combinations and stay within himself, whereas I think sometimes Kape likes to be a little bit showboaty. And to me, when it comes to Van in this style matchup, I think that the volume game is going to be a little bit too much for Silva. Silva here, he tends to throw one shot at a time. He doesn't necessarily throw in combinations. So as long as Joshua Van kind of, takes his time, gets his reads and kind of has good head movement, which he generally does in all of his wins, I think that he can definitely have success here against Silva. I think Silva's going to look to try and take this one to the ground, but we saw in Van's last fight, he's very, very tough to take down and hold down, improve takedown defense. And I think ultimately the volume and the pressure of Joshua Van is going to be too much for Silva. And we see in a lot of the lighter weight classes that 35-year-old, the older guys tend to struggle. So Silva getting up there at 35 in age is definitely not a plus on his side. And I've been impressed with Joshua Van. I think that he gets it done here with the pressure, the volume of the boxing, and just keeping this one on the feet overall. So give me Van here, and I know Carlos likes Van as well. And next up, we have Mario Bautista taking on Patchy Mix. The UFC has finally decided to get Patchy Mix here from Bellator. I'm happy that he's in the UFC. I've wanted him to fight for a long time. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Do you think the Bellator debutant gets it done, or is Mario Bautista going to keep his win streak over Jose Aldo and all the other guys that he's been able to beat going?
Well, Patchy's had that amazing knee KO of Rufion Stotts, and he is pretty much the human backpack. Once he gets on there, that's going to be very hard. That's where he gets his finishes. That's where he gets total body control, especially when that figure four comes on. He throws on that figure four. I mean, and you can't really get out. It keeps you from breathing. He's always keeping his hands busy, looking for the submission from there. It's very difficult for me to say that once this hits the ground, Bautista's not in trouble. Bautista's going to be in a lot of trouble because I feel as soon as it hits the ground, he's probably not at that level, even defensively, to keep Mix from getting a submission. The problem with that is I feel that Mix is not good enough with him on the feet. I think that Bautista could actually pressure Mix a little bit and force him to actually go for takedowns. I don't think that Mix can stand with him blow for blow and make it easy for himself. Only because Bautista is a grinder. He likes to get you up against the cage, as you know, against Aldo. He may keep going for takedowns, and this one he may not go for takedowns, but he's just going to keep coming at you. And he's going to keep coming at your strikes. And he's not the biggest puncher. He's not the biggest he doesn't have the biggest power, and he's not the greatest wrestler, especially you don't want to wrestle too much with Patchy Mix. But the thing is I just see that this is a very tough out for Patchy Mix. I'm going to go with him. Okay. I think that he can do enough on the feet to get a good takedown. And I feel that once it gets to the ground, that Bautista's going to be in a lot of trouble. But I do feel that this is not going to be an easy matchup for Mix. Like I think that I'm not very confident in this one. I feel that Bautista can win this one at any moment too. But if he wins it, I feel it's going to be a decision. And it's going to be very boring. So I'm going to go with Mix, and I'm going to hope we have a fun fight here and we see a flashy submission.
I will say, when I saw Mix say in his media day with the UFC that he wants to revenge Jose Aldo for that Mario Bautista bullshit decision, I already knew who I was picking in this fight. So I'm definitely going with Mix here. But no, in all seriousness, I do think that he can win. I'm a little bit more confident, I think, in Mix than Carlos is. Mario Bautista's got decent kickboxing. He's got good BJJ once the fight hits the floor. But to me, I think he lacks in the wrestling department. And I think that Mix overall is the better grappler. So I think if Bautista can keep this one on the feet, I agree with Carlos. I definitely think his best path to victory is to keep it standing and win the striking exchanges. I just think here with Mix, I think he's going to be able to get some sort of body lock or some sort of trip takedown, some sort of, movement towards either clinching or whatever that case may be in the grappling, where he's going to be able to get his back or, get a guillotine. Maybe he hurts Bautista on the feet somehow, and Bautista shoots him for a sloppy takedown and Mix gets that guillotine. I just think that whichever way this fight goes, there's going to come a point where Mix is going to be able to take advantage and ultimately maybe find a submission victory here. Mix on the feet, I know Carlos said, he's not necessarily the best on the feet, but he does have a nice inside low kick. He does have a nice sort of step-in knee that he can definitely use. And I've been impressed with him over in Bellator. I think that he had a good display against Magomedov. He's definitely gritty. He's definitely tough. And he doesn't mind being taken down even if he can't get the fight to the ground. So I think there is going to be a path to victory here. I think he gets into the clinch, or I think that he shoots for bad takedowns. He gets one, and I think ultimately gets the backpack or the guillotine, finds the neck here of Bautista and gets some revenge. And I hope that he chokes him unconscious. And next up,
it's a lot of hate. It's a lot of hate.
You can see the fumes coming off from that Aldo loss, but it is what it is, man. But one Brazilian I do like, though, is Vicente Luque taking on Kevin Holland here. And this one's a tough one for me because I do think that Vicente Luque is live in this fight, and I do like Kevin Holland as well. But I think at 170, I think that the reach advantage here for Kevin Holland, and I do think the fact that he can defend takedowns at 170 a little bit easier is going to be the path to victory here for him. I think he keeps this one on the feet, uses his range, uses his long striking, and ultimately he's going to be able to beat Luque up on the feet. Now, the reason I said I think that Luque is live here is because Luque in the past has come out and wrestle heavied throughout a 3-round fight. Now, he might be able to get Kevin Holland down, and we know that both guys are very, very slick on the ground, so I could see Luque, getting takedowns, getting top control, using ground and pound, and kind of just riding out a decision victory. I don't think that Luque is going to be able to wrestle and get Kevin Holland down enough here for him to be able to get that victory. I think Kevin keeps this one standing. Like I said, better takedown defense at 170. I think that the range advantage here for Kevin Holland, I think the striking is going to be enough here for him to get it done. And I think that Kevin also knows as well coming in that he's going to be able to defend takedowns better, which is going to allow him to let his hands go. And I've always been sort of high on Vicente Luque, but ever since he had that brain bleed injury a couple of years ago, he's looked decent. Like, don't get me wrong, he had that anaconda choke or Das choke against Thembo Gorimbo in his last fight, but Thembo Gorimbo isn't necessarily anywhere near the level of Kevin Holland, and on the ground, he's not going to be able to just submit Kevin Holland, obviously a very, very high-leveled BJJ practitioner himself. So I think Kevin keeps it standing, uses his range, and gets it done on the feet. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm gonna have to say I'm going with Holland as well. My only issue is he going to take it serious? Because I feel that whether Luque comes in ready to go or not, I think Holland can beat him if he felt like it. You know what I mean? It's just the fact that not that Luque's chinny. There's nothing wrong. And people get hit, they get their bell rung. That's fine. I just feel that Holland's got a lot of pop. And if you're going to stand in front of him, and Luque allows himself to get hit because he sometimes likes to get in a dogfight, he's going to get put to sleep because, Holland will finish him. But the other thing, too, is like if they go to the ground, if Luque ends up on top, yes, he's going to go for a lot of ground pound. That give enough space to get back up, or possibly throw his legs up, get a submission. Who knows? Or at least attempt it. Luque really doesn't have any other way of finishing from the guard. You know what I mean? He's gonna have to get out of the guard, and in between getting out of the guard, trying to get the side mount, Holland is gonna have enough space to get out of there. So, because he does scramble pretty nicely off his back. So, I feel that this fight is going to take place on the feet, and if it does, I feel Holland is probably going to going to finish this. If Luque does win and it's with top control, it's going to be kind of boring because Holland does have good wrist control when he's on the bottom as well with those long arms. And Luque is going to have a hard time getting free.
2 for Kevin Holland here, but I think the danger definitely comes from both guys. I think this will ultimately be a good scrap on the main card, so interesting to see how this one plays out. And next up, we have Joe Pyfer, Joe Pyfer, as Dana White would say, taking on Kelvin Gastelum. And this fight's obviously been rebooked. It was meant to be at UFC Mexico with Brandon Moreno's in the main event. And I can't remember off the top of my head the exact reason why this one got canceled. I know it was something to do with Kelvin Gastelum getting sick or something. We made fun of him on the recap video, but give me Joe Pyfer here, man. I don't even think Kelvin Gastelum takes his UFC career that seriously anymore. Joe Pyfer, very athletic striker, can come in and mix in takedowns. Kelvin Gastelum, very undersized for the 185 middleweight division. And I think that wherever this fight goes, I think Joe Pyfer can get it done. I think on the feet, he's the harder hitter. Obviously in the grappling, him training over at Renzo Gracie Philly, that obviously training with some higher level grapplers himself. He showed in that Al Hassan fight that he can come out and get takedowns if he wants to. Got the arm triangle victory there. I think wherever this fight goes, I think it plays out in Joe Pyfer's favor. And I think one of the things that is a big factor here, which is why I like Joe Pyfer more in this fight than I did in the UFC Mexico fight, was that fight in UFC Mexico was at altitude. This one here, obviously not being at altitude, I think that serves Pyfer, who's a very explosive, muscle-bound kind of guy. We see with the muscle-bound guys that they tend to, the lactic acid build-up, kind of plays a factor in the fight. So I did kind of question the cardio of Pyfer. And obviously Kelvin Gastelum in the past has shown to be tough, have good cardio, and kind of grit out late victories. So I don't think that that's going to be on the cards anymore. I think that this one not being at altitude favors Joe Pyfer even more. And like I said, I don't trust Kelvin Gastelum and where his head's at. I don't necessarily like him fighting at middleweight either. I think he's undersized, and I think that the ultimate size, strength, and athleticism here for Pyfer is going to get it done no matter where this fight goes. So give me Joe Pyfer to get it done. Carlos, who you got in this
one? Yeah, I went Joe Pyfer too. This is kind of a no-brainer. It's just the fact that number one, we don't even know if Calvin's going to make weight for this fight. And number two is the fact that he loses to bigger grapplers all the time. Now, whether or not Pyfer wants to just take him down and ground and pound him, look for a submission, that's up to him. But he can do that if he wants to, or he can stand on the feet. And, the other thing is Calvin is slick on the feet, slick enough to hurt Joe Pyfer, but maybe the power is a little too much for Gastelum, and he overwhelms him and makes it easy for himself and takes him down. Who knows? I don't see him getting a knockout on Kelvin Gastelum, but what I do see is him having enough pop to just beat him up for 3 rounds if it stays a stand-up war. If it goes to the ground, I could see him finishing with a submission or ground and pound. That's what happens when you don't want to be disciplined and you don't want to make the weight. You just end up an easy target for a gorilla, and that's what Joe Pyfer is in this matchup.
Yeah, and for all the people that sit here and say, oh, well, Kelvin Gastelum did this and did this throughout his career, go check out his YouTube channel. He literally has an episode and a series called Missing Weight with Kelvin Gastelum, where he just goes and eats a shit ton of food. So I'm never going to bet on a guy and choose a guy that doesn't look like he takes his UFC career seriously, and I think Joe Pyfer definitely does. And next up, that brings us to the co-main event of UFC 316, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button if you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, as Carlos and I break down Kayla Harrison, the 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist, taking on Juliana Pena, the current bantamweight champion. Carlos, are we going to hear Ann New, or are we going to see Ann Still on Saturday?
That's tough for me right now. Only reason why I find that tough is, number one, like, just for the performance that Pena gave against Pennington. All of a sudden, Pennington's knocking people down with punches. She's this hard hitter. She got the decision. I don't even know if that was the right decision, but personally, I know you're not gonna like this one, but I'm gonna go with Juliana Pena in this. Okay.
God.
I think that fight was at altitude, and Pennington was ready to go, and Juliana took it kind of easy, saying, "Oh, I could just show up and fight. I'll be ready to go." Okay, maybe she's not that bright in that category. Who knows? But when it comes to what I see is on the feet, let's say Harrison has people are going to believe she has the advantage. I don't necessarily see that. I see the pressure of Pena actually making her wilt on the feet. And I see Pena landing a little bit more because she's just going to be in your face and she's going to be throwing with those high elbows and coming at you all the time. I don't think Kayla Harrison will be ready for that. The other thing, too, is Kayla Harrison is a 2-time gold medalist in judo. What that means is once you get Ippon, then the match is over. She's not very good at grappling. And if she wants to take Juliana Pena down, Juliana Pena actually has a chance on the ground at submitting Harrison. So that's not a good place to go when you're being overwhelmed on the feet. Now, yeah, Harrison has ground and pound. She's going to be hitting someone that's got a big head here, because hard head, I should say, because Juliana Pena is a tough, she's a tough cookie. But I don't necessarily think that ground and pound is going to be the way she wins this fight as Harrison. I don't necessarily see her winning this. I don't know why. And if she does win it, it's going to be a very close fight. But yeah, I'm going with Juliana on this one.
Yeah, Juliana Pena in this one, a 5-1 underdog here. Kayla Harrison, she's very, very big favorite. I think she's something like -800 or something. But I don't know what it is about you and Juliana Pena. You picked her in the last one, and she got a robbery of the decision. But I see the love for Juliana Pena coming from Carlos here, and he already knows where I'm going with this. Give me Kayla Harrison, man. Come on now. Before I break this one down, I just want to say as well, for all of you snakes out there that's sitting here saying that Kayla Harrison isn't a beautiful woman because she has some muscle, you guys are insecure. You need to get a grip and stop simping on OnlyFans models. But the one thing I will say here, Kayla Harrison is an absolute physical specimen. Let's get that out of the way. Obviously, 2-time Olympic gold medalist in the judo department. She is very, very good on the ground. She's very mean once fights hit the ground. She does tend to muscle her opponents once she does get top control. The one worry I do have in this matchup here is obviously Juliana Pena being a tough cookie, as Carlos described, is if this fight goes a little bit longer, what does Harrison's cardio look like? She obviously comes in and then tries to get the takedowns early. I think out of the two, I'd say Harrison's a little bit more technical on the feet, or at least tries to stay technical. Juliana Pena, to me, elbows flared up in the air. She throws those combinations kind of coming at you like this. I don't get me wrong. I don't think either of these two women striking is good. I'm not saying either of them are, but I think with Harrison, I think that she at least tries to stay composed, tries to stay technical. I think she has a championship mindset, whereas Juliana Pena just has a big mouth. I think Pena was lucky to ever even get the title the first time against Amanda Nunes. I think that was more of Amanda Nunes showing up thinking that she could just put her out with one punch and gassed herself out, swinging and beating her up. Pena was able to get the rear naked choke, as we know. I've never been high on Juliana Pena. I think that the only thing that's good about her is the fact that she talks a good game. I don't think she's that good. I think Kayla Harrison comes in here in the first maybe 1, 2, 3 rounds, gets takedowns. I think that she's able to get the judo sweeps, the judo throws here. And I think that she gets on top position and she either chokes her out or beats her up with ground and pound. Vicious elbows. I think that obviously in the PFL for most of her career, she wasn't able to use elbows. I think that's going to play a big factor here. I think she comes in and she just puts her elbow right in Juliana Pena's mouth, gets it done, and new. And that brings us to the main event of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. UFC 316, Merab Dvalishvili taking on Sean O'Malley. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in the main event?
I got my man Merab. I'm going with him. I understand he's got a broken toe. Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be just fine. It is the little piggy, so I mean, it's still going to have some weight on it. You know what I mean? But it's going to have a lot of weight on it. But it's not as much as the big toe. So okay, I'll let that one go. If he's letting it go, I'm going to let it go. That's not going to be an excuse. But what I am going to say is I don't know what O'Malley's going to be able to do to back him up, to make him stop, other than shut him off. And I don't think he's going to be able to shut him off. He might be able to hurt him for a little bit with one shot, because I think he even rocked him in the last fight. The problem is Merab kind of, once he gets you going backwards, he kind of chains everything very well, from throwing a couple of strikes to going for a takedown, forcing you to come in with a couple of strikes and then shooting for a takedown. And I just don't know if O'Malley's going to be ready for that. He wasn't ready before, and I don't think he'll be ready now. I also don't know how. I know he had surgery on his hip, and he says he had a bad hip, but he also went online saying that he won that fight. that they just had. And I just was thinking, like, is he trying to motivate himself, thinking, I already won. This is going to be easy. And the judges cheated me. I don't think that, I don't know. I don't know what he is sometimes. A little delusional, maybe. But I do know that Merab is going to be a tough out because that cardio is such a hard weapon to have. And I don't think O'Malley has it for that pace. And Merab's not the greatest on the feet. Like, he's not great at slipping punches, but he's good enough at just moving a little to get where he needs to be without getting hurt. And I think that's all he needs to get this going again. Once he gets a couple takedowns, a little bit of ground and pound, barely any ground and pound. He barely hurts anyone when he gets him down. But whatever ground and pound is, he's going to try to do it. Mostly, I find it funny that he just wins with getting a takedown. The guys get back up, and he just dances around and talks to the crowd. And I just don't see a way for O'Malley to slow him down.
Yeah, I mean, Merab is obviously an absolute specimen. Obviously, he's got that nickname, you know, the machine. His pace, his pressure, his wrestling is definitely something to behold. And Carlos obviously touched upon it, that foot injury, that little pinky toe injury. I don't think it's going to play a huge factor here. Merab's tough as shit. And one thing I will think that it might affect him a little bit is when he dances around on the outside. He was doing that in round 5 to get away from Sean O'Malley. It might affect his movement a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to play a factor. And before I talk a little bit about Sean O'Malley, I just want to talk about the first fight a little bit. Is obviously that fight taking place at the Sphere, that huge event, that obviously the spectacle that the UFC put on. It took millions for them to get that arena, millions of them to put that whole spectacle together. And I watched a video with Ariel Helwani talking about Sean O'Malley, and they were interviewing Sean O'Malley, and he said that 10 weeks out before UFC Sphere, he had the torn labrum, he had that hip injury, and then 2 weeks later, he got the call 8 weeks out for UFC Sphere, saying he's going to headline UFC Sphere with Merab. Now, in my opinion, and this is just my take on this one, I believe that what happened is that he knew he had that hip injury, but it was a big opportunity for him at the Sphere. He was obviously didn't want to let the UFC down, and he took that fight regardless. And he said in the interview, I took that fight because I didn't want to let the UFC down. They'd entrusted me with this, you know, big arena, this big spectacle, this big event, right? So I think that he took that fight. I think he told the UFC, listen, I got this hip injury, but I'm going to take the fight anyway. Or he didn't tell them, and then he mentioned it to them afterwards. Either way. The people have been complaining about Sean O'Malley getting this rematch and that he doesn't deserve it. I don't think that he deserves this rematch either, but I think part of the reason he's getting this rematch is because he didn't cancel that main event and he didn't pull out of that fight. He didn't let the UFC down, which is why that he's coming into this one, and that's why they're giving him the rematch. So I just wanted to say that. So, and I'll just let everybody know right now, dog of the week, Sugar Sean O'Malley. That's where we're going with this one. If you saw the video, I uploaded it earlier on today, plus 250 Sugar Sean O'Malley. I think he gets it done in this one. And when I was watching the interview where he was talking to Ariel Helwani, he was talking about he's getting rid of all of his social media. He's not been on social media since Christmas. He's stopped smoking throughout his fight, not just his fight camp, but since Christmas. He's been dialed in. He's been fighting and sparring with Israel Adesanya. He's brought in Demetrius Johnson. He's been basically working on knees up the middle with Demetrius and working in the clinch with Demetrius Johnson. And I honestly believe that this is going to be the best Sean O'Malley that we've seen. And when you go back and look at that first fight, you can see in there how much his hip is actually being affected. He likes to switch stances. He likes to go southpaw and then switch back to orthodox or switch to southpaw. And you can see in that fight, he can barely fight out of the southpaw stance. He can't throw the left kick. He can't throw anything really on the left side. And he did actually a decent job, all things considered, of stuffing some of the takedowns. He got taken down. He got right back to his feet. Merab was kind of just kneeing the thigh, kneeing the glute. And I just think, honestly, in that fight that people's perspective of that fight was that Merab dominated that fight from start to finish. I completely disagree. You go back and watch it. O'Malley won on two scorecards, the third round, and he also on all of the judges' scorecards won the fifth round. I don't think that he won the fight. I think that's a crazy take. I agree with Carlos. I don't think that Sean O'Malley won that fight whatsoever, but I think people's opinion is that Merab ran away with that one. I think it was much closer than people think, especially in a couple of rounds. And I think coming in here fully healthy, fully motivated, and ready, kind of just dialed in, I think we see the best Sean O'Malley. I think if he pressures Merab forward, I think he throws the straight shots, uses his length, keeps his one on his feet. I think he wins his belt back. So give me Sean O'Malley, dog of the week, for getting it done here. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar outcome here of what's Merab's Sterling, Aljamain Sterling. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar outcome here of the Aljamain Sterling fight with that counter right hand. So give me Sean O'Malley, dog of the week. And Carlos, before we wrap things up, is there anything that you want to say to the people?
No, just hope you enjoyed the content, and don't forget to like and subscribe, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leave a link for the Dog of the Week video. It should be popping up on your screen any moment now. And we'll catch you in the next one. Hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.
Peace.